What's up, guys? Nick Borrman here, along with Andy Lang for another episode of Tea Time from Vegas. This week we are staying in Hawaii again. Well, Andy and I really aren't in Hawaii. I wish we were, but the golfers are going to stay there anyway. So we'll roll right over to the Sony Open this week, which is a completely different animal than last week at Kapalua. But we'll get into that. Get to that in a minute. Andy, my friend, how are you? How did you end up making out for last week? And tell us what you got going on right now on your page at WagerTalk.
Well, last week was pretty much perfect. That's what I expect every week, and if I do this every week, we'll be rich. Low volume card because we had a small field, 3-1, and we profited 6 units for myself and all the clients. That's my goal. Profit every single week. You don't need to go big on every single card. And 3-1, I'll take it every single week. This week got 4 plays up head-to-head matchups for full tourney. And that pack is always going to include daily head-to-heads. I think I had 2 this last week. We won one of them and tied the other. But the pack will include head-to-head matchups for full tourney and daily. And we're going to go over 2 a little bit later in the show. And looking forward to the Sony Open. Love these Hawaii tournaments.
Well, listen, I would never tell the viewers not to buy your pack for the week, but we do have a pretty good promo for a longer pass than just this 1 week. Right now, you can grab a 30-day golf pass, use promo code SONY40, get 30 days of myself or Andy for $59. Normally $99, you're going to get $40 off of that. And if you buy this on Wednesday, 30 days works out to cover 5 tournaments. So just give you a little cheat code there, like, Nintendo 64 or some crap like that. Use the pass Sony 40. Great deal. Both Andy and myself profitable in week 1. Let's hope we continue into week 2 this week again in Hawaii. Andy, let's talk a little bit about last week. Obviously, it was our first show of 2022, and let's recap a little bit about what happened with some of our bets. We'll start with you first. What was your best bet? What was your worst bet from last week, that laughable one that you probably don't want to talk about, but hell, let's talk about it.
I love this segment. We're going to try and do this every week. What was our best bet? What was our worst bet? So we can relish in our wins and laugh at our losses. My best bet was getting Xander Schauffele at plus money against Bryson DeChambeau. Talked about Bryson last week. Hasn't played a lot since the Ryder Cup. Was a disaster against the head-to-head against Brooks Koepka. Xander loves playing here. Getting him at plus money was great. Won by a few shots, but really never in doubt. Worst bet, Abraham Answer over Brooks Koepka. The course was set up for bombers, and I took Abraham Answer, who averages 289 off the tee, against Brooks Koepka, who averages 311 off the tee. So I took one of the shortest players in the field against one of the longest players in the field. And to the surprise of nobody, it fizzled. It was a 3-1. It was a good week, but I have regrets about taking Answer over Koepka.
Listen, Answer was hot. He didn't show up in Hawaii that first week, so it happens. I had my best bet of the week was Na. I also took him on the outright market, which obviously didn't come through with Cam Smith shooting 75 under par. But Kevin Na plus 145 was the head-to-head market over Taylor Gooch, who has been really hot. But Na was just one of those guys coming in. He was in the top 10 of strokes gained over the last 6 months. So it's kind of where I start looking at outrights, and we'll get to that in a second. But so that was my best bet for the week. Worst bet, K.H. Lee, Kai Young Hoon. I had him for a top 10. He finished bottom 5. So, yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it paid the same as if he finished 11th, right? So that's golf, right? It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter doesn't matter the margin of loss. It was just a loss. Exactly. You still had a winning week, so we can laugh about it.
It doesn't make me feel better that it was basically over on Thursday, but what can you do? We'll try them again in the future runs. So hopefully we listen, when you're betting leaderboard or outright plays, you're going to have that. You're going to have 1 or 2 that cash on a leaderboard, and they're paying 6-1, 7-1, and you're going to have a couple that completely missed the boat. But that's okay, because as long as one of them hits, you're going to be fine. So it was what happened, and we're going to move on. Last thing I just want to take a quick look at here, the top 10 graphic from last week we previewed was the top 10 strokes gained over the last 6 months. I always talk about this as my starting point when looking at players to get behind going into that tournament. And I wanted to look at how they finished. So the top 3 guys Patrick Cantley, John Rahm, Cam Smith. That means the 3 hottest players basically over the last 6 months. Where did they finish? 4th, 2nd, and 1st. Again, it's not going to happen like that every week, but it does reaffirm a little bit about, looking at that strokes gained data to really know who's hot. And golf is so ebb and flow, and you want to get the guys when they're riding that flow and obviously avoid them when they're not. So pretty good results there, and really nothing on that whole list that's jumps out that's any sort of negative. So we'll move on to this week. We'll look at the Sony Open board next. Top 10 strokes gained for the Sony Open. We'll start off with none other than Cam Smith, of course, adding some strokes onto his previous 6 months now with that round he had. I mean, he's clearly the favorite in the field betting odds, and he has a wide margin here in betting and strokes gained over the last 6 months compared to number 2 in the field, who Kevin Na I already mentioned. That's why I had bet him last week. He was in the top 10 last week. He's now number 2. This field, obviously, not quite as strong as last week. And not nearly as many top 25 guys in here. So it drops off rather quickly, but you can see the whole full list here from M to Simpson to Gooch all the way down to Russell Henley rounding out the top 10 and falling under a stroke gain per round, and then it really gets jammed up after that. So anyway, just wanted to show that graphic for everybody out there as a way to start looking at some of the outrights this week. Andy, we'll go to you next. Let's do a little quick back and forth on a little bit about the course. What do you want to tell the viewers, listeners about the course? Waialae, of course, Country Club is where we are this week, and anything on the field as well.
Well, first off, I say this every year. I don't understand the players that come out and play the Tourney of Champions and not the Sony Open. You're already out there.
True.
I don't understand that one at all. Look at the Australian players. It's summer for them. And a lot of times you're going to see them have they're in form. They've been playing. And so we're looking at Cameron Smith. Never missed the cut here. Mark Leishman, not missed the cut. Finished 4th and 3rd 2 of the last 3 years. Even Matt Jones, he played great last week. He hasn't missed the cut since 2011 here. So take a look at some of these Australian players. We're also going to be looking at similar weather conditions as last week. I know it's not the same course, but the wind is the biggest factor with these 2 tournaments, and it's going to be calm. Hawaii's gotten a lot of moisture, so we saw last week a lot of wet grass and a lot of wet rough to some of the early guys going out, and we're going to see it a little bit similar. I actually think it helps the longer guys because what we've seen in the past with this course is the longer guys, they hit it a mile, and it rolls right into the rough. The rough is cut low because of all the moisture that we've had. So I think this is, again, going to set up really nice for some of the bombers. So I would expect some of the longer guys off the tee to do well this week.
Your point about the Australians being in form coming into this is really well said. I mean, at one point, I don't know if it was 3rd round or somewhere in there, I was looking at the leaderboard, and I swear every Aussie in the field was in the top 10. I don't think it finished quite that way, but they were all playing well, and it's a really good point to make, especially people traveling from the Northern Hemisphere over the United States or anything like that, making the trip down here. It's a different time of year, different ball game as far as form goes. Everybody coming off the holidays might be a little, I don't know, hung over on their cookies or whatever. So, but Waialae, I'll add a couple notes here for you. Completely different track than Kapalua. Kapalua, elevation change galore. Waialae, there's almost none. I think it has a complete course elevation change of just 10 feet. So it's pretty flat. Although it's in Hawaii and it's on the coast, there's actually not much water that comes into play here. Most of the hazards to look out for is there's 83 bunkers on the course, and you mentioned it. Really, the defense of the course, like Kapalua, any course in Hawaii, is the wind, but there is not much projected to be here this week. So low scores are going to happen. Also worth noting, doesn't really matter from a betting standpoint, but they do flip the front 9 and back 9 from regular daily play, member play, to this tournament, and then the 18th hole is a 550-yard par 5, which is normally 9, so it's a good finishing hole. To hopefully have some fireworks down there at the end. The field, of course, this is a regular tournament, 144 players. We'll have a cut down to 65 in ties for the weekend. So if anybody playing fantasy, Andy, we're in that league together. I got to make sure to get my guys to the weekend. I really suck at that. I did it last week. I made all 4 to the weekend. I was proud of myself. So we'll see if we can do it again this week. And I did mention the field is a lot, weaker, I guess we'll use this week, with only 7 guys in the top 25 making the trip. And Andy, you mentioned why play one week and not the next week. 23 of the 38 players from last week are playing this week. The other 15 are sipping pina coladas or whatever else they chose to do. I'm not sure. So on that note, I wanted to highlight a couple betting trends. So of those 23 players, you might want to start there when looking at betting this tournament, whether it's matchups or outrights. 7 of the last 8 winners at the Sony Open played the week before at Kapalua. In some wild irony, the exception to that is Cam Smith. So that's kind of funny. Going back even further, since the Tournament of Champions, last week's event moved to Kapalua. That was 99. 16 winners of the Sony Open played Kapalua. So listen, it doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. I mentioned good stats last week. 12 straight Americans won, and guess who didn't win last week? So it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's a good starting point for those looking for outright. See the guy that played last week and start there. Also, first-timers, it's pretty much a standard on the tour. A lot of first-timers aren't going to win anywhere, first-timers being at the course. And since Waialae joined the PGA Tour in 1965, only one has earned a victory the first time they played this course. That was Russell Henley in 2013. So avoid those first-timers as well. So I'll start off real quick with a couple guys. This course, Andy, you mentioned with when you were talking before about guys that have never missed a cut here. You were talking about Aussies in particular, but this course has several horse for the course guys, if we'll use that term. And I'll start right off the top with the longest shot, a guy I'm looking at this week here, none other than CH3 Charles Howell III. Everybody knows it coming into this event. He has not won, but he is a perfect 20 for 20 in cuts made. He's got half of his starts here are top 10s. You know, he's a guy, if you look at his history on the PGA Tour, it's basically like you can pick 5 or 6 courses that he just shows up every single year, and then you don't hear about him the rest of the year. And this is definitely one of those tournaments that he plays well. And coming into this, you know, it's not like he's completely off the map. He actually ranks 18th in this field. Again, it's a weaker field, but 18th in this field in total strokes gained over the last 6 months at plus 0.73. So the one negative is he did not tee it up last week. So if you're using any of that information I said before, you might avoid him on the outright, and he hasn't won it yet. But I expect him to have a good week. So head-to-head matchups or maybe a top 10 or top 20 play. Right now he's 50-1 on the outright market, and he's plus 450 for a top 10 is what I'm seeing on DraftKings. So that's one of the outright plays. Andy, let's go to you for a matchup. What do you who you liking this week, and who are you fading?
I'm going to fade Jason Kokrak, and I'm going to take Billy Horschel over Jason Kokrak. Kokrak was just an absolute disaster putting last week, and it's strange from last season because he was great. He ranked 6th best in strokes gained putting, but it's not been a great start to the season for him. He was minus 5.255 putting last week, and it just looks like he struggles this part of the season. So this season he won the Houston Open, but he finished last at the tournament last week, 54th in miscut in his other 2 tournaments this season, and he did the same thing last year. Finished 35th at the Tournament of Champions, 56th at the Sony. So for whatever reason, he doesn't play well over here. I expect a tough week for him unless he completely turns his putting game around. I don't expect that. Horschel finished 9 strokes ahead of Kokrak last week, and it's crazy. Like Jason Kokrak, he's got very similar results last year. They look very similar. Finished 24th at the Tournament of Champions last year and 7th at the Sony Open. So if those trends keep up, I think I get a really good Billy Horschel. He should cruise in this matchup. Kokrak seems to enjoy the vacation over in Hawaii. So give me Billy Horschel over Jason Kokrak for my first head-to-head this week.
I like that play. Looks like I'm looking at his price right now. He's about minus 115, I think. So that's more than reasonable. And you're right, Kokrak looked lost last week on those greens. So good person to fade coming into this week. I will highlight one more person. You already mentioned him, Andy, as a guy to look out for this week. Mark Leishman, the Aussie, staying home. Another guy that just has absolutely torched this place. Similar to Charles Howell, but not 20 for 20. He's 12 for 12 in cuts made at Waialae. 7 top 20s, including 4 top 10s. He ranks slightly higher than Howell this week in total strokes gained over the last 6 months. He sits 12th in this field at plus 0.91. But unlike Howell, Leishman did play last week at Kapalua and played pretty well. He actually finished a solid tie for 10th there. So I think Leishman's got the form coming in. He's clearly got the course history at this event. Never missed that cut. So right now, not nearly as much value on the board with him. He's 16-1 on the outright market and only plus 190 for a top 10. But either those or looking at him in a matchup, I expect him to have a good week. I expect him to be there all 4 days. Maybe I should be looking at him for my fantasy lineup because clearly I need help getting to the weekend. So Mark Leishman is a guy I will be watching this week. Andy, let's go back to you. I love your head-to-head plays, man. 3-1 last week. I know you'll probably pull that out again. You seem to do it every single week. What's another matchup you're looking at for this week?
Going to another Australian, Matt Jones over Russell Henley. Just real quick, I do have to say, every time they play this tournament, I have a friend who bet $100 on that 2013 Russell Henley outright. What was that? It took 250-1. It was a lot of It was a lot of arguing with the books. I don't know how he came up with it. I had never heard of Russell Henley at the time, but he hit it, and yes, he did eventually get paid. I will never forget that week. So, but since then, I got to say, I think we've all lost money on Russell Henley over the years. I don't trust him. I never really have. And Matt Jones played great last week. He finished third. Now, I will say, he had a couple chip-ins and some really long putts. So I don't expect that to continue. But, I mean, these guys, these Australians, these New Zealand, they play so good at this tournament. They tied Henley and Matt Jones. They tied, finishing 11th last year. But the 3 previous years, Jones finished well ahead of Henley. And Henley's actually missed the cut here, 2020 and 2018. I really like that Jones played well last week in similar conditions and similar weather conditions. I think he's going to feel a little bit familiar with the turf. And I'm always a little bit hesitant with some of these guys that don't play in the Tournament Champions and then come play in the Sony. So I like what I'm getting from Matt Jones. I'd never trust Russell Henley, so I'll take Matt Jones over Henley this week.
Yeah, man. Did you listen to anything I said? The outright winner is going to come from somebody that played last week. So I love your Matt Jones play. 62-61 on the weekend. He was the lowest guy in the field at Kapalua, and he shot up that leaderboard. So I always like looking at that angle of somebody coming in, like playing well on a Sunday and then playing well, or then teeing it up that following Thursday. A lot of times it's a good carryover stat. So 62-61 is pretty damn impressive. And it looks like he did finish tied for 11th here at Waialae last year. So good play on Matt Jones. I like that as well. I'll end with one more fella. He's definitely one of the favorites this week. Again, just another horse for the course guys. And that's the theme this week for me, because there are guys, this tournament seems to produce, the same leaderboards year in and year out. So Webb Simpson is another guy that is just, he's perfect. He's 11 for 11 in cuts made. His number is the lowest of the 3 I've mentioned today. But he's been extremely consistent in those 11 cuts. He's actually made 7 straight top 20s, so even more consistent than the other 2 as far as being up there on that first page of the leaderboard. His last 3 starts here, tied for 4th, 3rd, tied for 4th. He also comes in hotter than either Howell or Leishman. He ranks 4th in this field. If you remember that strokes gained graphic we looked at the beginning of the show, 4th in this field in total strokes gained over the last 6 months, averaging plus 1.49 per round, and he's finished in the top 15 in each of his last 2 starts in general. So Webb Simpson, again, lowest odds here, 12-1, not great, plus 160 for a top 10, but check him out on head-to-head matchups and definitely have something going with Simpson this week. Any of those 3 guys are great plays, and I think they'll be, again, the goal is to get to the weekend. I think they'll be there with the chance on Sunday. Andy, any last notes for the viewers? Any other things you want to touch on from a betting perspective or anything else that I should know for this week?
Yeah, just real quick, want to welcome everybody from New York that now has access to some of these domestic lines. Yep. I do have to say, if you are a golf bettor and you are new to having these domestic lines, and the reason I know this is I have a couple of friends from New York, it can be overwhelming. If you're used to just the offshores, you will see more golf props, more bets, and more matchups than you've ever seen. Do not get too excited. Calm down. You do not have to make 20 bets this weekend. I know what it's like. When I first got DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, I couldn't wait. But just, be conservative with this and just take it one step at a time. And also, this is just kind of a weekly reminder. You mentioned Mark Leishman earlier, Nick. If you're betting these top 10s, 20s, and 40s, the domestic books, they pay out on ties. Make sure you're betting these on books that pay out on ties. Mark Leishman, he finished tied for 10th. If you were on a book that paid out ties, you got a full payout. If you were on a book that doesn't pay out on ties, you got half, because he tied with Cam Davis. It's very, very important. Just a few seconds of looking what books pay out on those props is really, really important. And if a golf boost on those sports books seems too good to be true, it probably is. That's my word of advice.
Well said. And yeah, you're referring to the what they call the day in the books, when you get somebody that finishes top 10, they're tied with 8 other guys, and your payout's reduced quite a bit. So one good thing to pay attention to. So Andy, good luck this week. I know you will kill it again. Guys, thanks for tuning in. One last reminder of our promo for the show. 30-day pass for either Andy or myself. Grab that for just $59. It's $40 off using our promo code Sony40. $40 off, regular price $99. Get it for just $59. And again, buy this on Wednesday. It will get the next 5 tournaments starting, of course, this week at the Sony Open. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Have fun watching the Waialae Country Club event this week. I know it'll be on prime time again because way out west, and has some late night coverage, so it'll be good viewing for sure. And as always, good luck with your bets.